If you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Livin the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream. What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you from beautiful sunny San Diego. This episode of the Livin the Dream podcast will be an opportunity to test how well you know your health, fitness, and wellness information. I will start by asking a quiz question and giving you a few multiple choice answers. Feel free to pause the episode after I've asked the question if you'd like a little more time to think about the answer. And once I've given the correct answer, I'll dive a little bit deeper into the topic, offering more information along with some tangible and actionable suggestions, ideas, recommendations, anything on how we can use this information to live a happier, healthier, and more fit, long lifespan. Keep track of how many you got right, and feel free to share your score with me and your network once you've completed your quiz. So if you're ready, let's begin. Quiz question number 1. Which of the following is not an effect of caffeine supplementation? Which of the following is not an effect of caffeine supplementation? Is it A, enhances focus and alertness, B, enhances athletic performance, C, reduce pain related to overexertion, or D, all of the above are an effect of caffeine? Enhance focus and alertness, enhance athletic performance, reduce pain related to overexertion, or is it all of the above are an effect of caffeine? And the correct answer is all the above are an effect of caffeine. Yes, caffeine is a crazy drug. It is one of our most used, and I would say most abused drugs. But it's so good that everyone just agrees that it's okay to do. I'm definitely one of those people. I love caffeine. I give caffeine credit for part of why I was and why I am such a good group fitness instructor. Real talk, it's amazing in its benefits. Caffeine is the number one psychoactive, which means it has an effect on your brain functioning. It's the number one psychoactive substance used worldwide. Caffeine can alter our perception of how hard exercise is. It can decrease the muscular pain that you feel due to overexertion. It can decrease pain brought on by exercise, and it also decreases perceived fatigue. That's what I call a miracle drug. Caffeine can also promote focus and alertness in most individuals, and it can also positively affect your concentration. Here are just a few more ways that caffeine can benefit your athletic performance. Caffeine has a 2 to 4% improvement in endurance performance, 2 to 4% improvement in endurance activities. It also has a small to moderate benefit on jumping, throwing, sprinting, muscular strength, and muscular endurance. What? The doses used in the activities that we just talked about were 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. That's the most common dose range in studies to enhance performance. Now, that's really hard to calculate for me and my brain because my brain doesn't do kilograms, nor does it do math that well. But anyway, so if you weigh like 150 pounds, that's about 200 to 400 milligrams of caffeine. So if you weigh about 150 pounds, 200 to 400 milligrams of caffeine to have these improvements in jumping, throwing, sprinting, muscular strength, muscular endurance. And that's a nice average amount of caffeine that's in like, let's say an average energy drink or an average drink from your favorite caffeine drug dealer, AKA whatever coffee shop that you use nowadays. But caffeine has an even greater effect on aerobic exercise. Studies show that 3 to 6 milligrams per kilogram of body weight consistently improves endurance performance by 2 to 4%. That's like taking someone that normally runs a 10-minute mile, and caffeine lets them run it 20 seconds faster. And that's not insignificant. When should you consume caffeine? Well, the manufacturers say that whenever you need a pick-me-up, about 45 to 60 minutes before you want it to peak in your bloodstream, about 45 to 60 minutes before. I've always had a really specific pre-lift routine where my caffeine goes in exactly 30 minutes before I start my warm-up. When I do it this way, I really start to feel it kick in during the warm-up, and I'm ready to bring the heat during my first few lifting sets of whatever big compound lifts that I do to start the day. I know most of you are with me on this caffeine train. I mean, it seems as if almost everyone in the world is, but caffeine is not perfect. It is a drug, and for some, it can have some negative effects. Potential adverse effects may include nervousness, jitters, upset stomach, and most importantly, interference with sleep. I'm sure there's more out there, potential adverse effects, but those are the big ones. And affecting your sleep is huge. I think I remember hearing a story of a guy that also bought the powdered kind of caffeine. He bought like a bucket of this powdered caffeine and he miscalculated his measurement. I think he got the decimal place wrong or something like that. And he took 10 times the max dose. I believe he actually passed away from this, from heart failure. So it's definitely not a drug to mess around with, which is why it's concerning to me, at least a little bit, why some of these mocha frappuccino unicorny drinky thingies that we get from the coffee shops, how younger kids are starting to drink these things. But hey, I took caffeine pre-workouts when I was like 15 and I turned out okay, right? Only God knows what were in the pre-workouts that I took. Some of them got taken off the shelves because they had methamphetamines in them. So great, awesome. Thanks for that. I don't even think that the companies that made some of those pre-workouts knew exactly what was in all of those either. But they worked so well. They got you going. Now, what I'm about to share with you, I've shared with more clients than I can remember. And for the ones that spend offensive amounts of money on things like coffee, energy drinks, soda, 5-hour energies, or whatever other liquid that they were drinking simply because they needed to be a real person in the morning, and then they did it again when they needed a midday pick-me-up. For those type of people, this one lifestyle change, this one little thing that you can buy and implement into your daily habits, it has helped those people save enough money to pay for a personal trainer itself. And yes, there are ways to not need energy just to function as a real human being, but I think I'm going to save that for another masterclass episode in itself. We're talking about caffeine here. So what I tell those clients when it comes to caffeine is I have been taking this particular caffeine supplement in a pill form since I was, I think, 20 years old. This supplement comes in a 200 milligram pill, and I chop it in half for almost everything that I do. I would take one in the morning while all of my friends drank their coffee. I was just over here with my water and my caffeine pill. And I've also recently started drinking mushroom coffee for its health benefits. And I also like the feeling of a nice warm drink to start the day. I kind of get it. But with this pill, I would take half of a pill 30 minutes before my workouts. And I actually still do this most days that I train. The particular supplement that I buy, it comes in a bottle of 100 pills. That means that each bottle gives me 200 servings. And guess how much it costs? $8. $8. One serving of your mocha frappuccino drink unicorn thingy is probably $8 in itself. My clients that were going to get coffee multiple times a day or going through multiple sodas for energy every time they were a little bit tired, if they made the change to taking this caffeine supplement, they ended up saving hundreds of dollars a month just by making that one switch. The supplement that I use, and they better not go out of stock after I say this, I would really cry, is from the company Allmax, ALLMAX. It's in a blue bottle, but I'm sure that they have many kinds. I just like this one because I don't have a caffeine crash from it. I have a noticeable energy boost. It's all clean, and I've done it for years, and it's worked. So while we should probably figure out why we need energy as much as we do, this is a nice little hack for those of us that decide caffeine is a drug that we want to use. You have to also remember that caffeine builds a tolerance. So when you first start, you might only need 50 milligrams to get you going, but over time, it's going to take more and more to match that same feeling. I don't want to sound judgmental because I totally support everyone doing what makes their lives happy and fulfilled. But once you get over like 400 milligrams a day, I've been there. Don't you worry. Men and my friends and family, they live right there all the time. But at that point, if it was me, I would take some time off and let that tolerance wear off. I cycle my caffeine 5 days on and 2 days off, but some people we'll do like 11 months on and 1 month off. There's a ton of different strategies of cycling your caffeine, but giving your receptors a break from caffeine every once in a while is really a good idea in my opinion. Okay, moving on. Question number 2. True or false? After resistance training exercise, while in a fasted state, muscle protein breakdown decreases. This is a tough one. True or false? After resistance training, after you lift weights, while you're in a fasted state, meaning you haven't eaten any food, muscle protein breakdown decreases. And the correct answer is false. A little play on words there to confuse you guys. Did it work? So after resistance training exercise, after you lift, muscle protein breakdown is increased if not food has been ingested. Your breakdown is increased, meaning that you do break down a little bit of muscle tissue if you haven't ingested food. Now hear me out. If your goal is to build muscle, there are 2 aspects of muscle protein metabolism that you need to know about. There's number 1, muscle protein synthesis, which is the creation of muscle. So the creation of muscle is one of these aspects. And then muscle protein breakdown, which is the degradation of muscle tissue, the breakdown of muscle. So the build, creation, or the breakdown, the degradation. If you're going to build muscle, muscle protein synthesis must be greater than muscle protein breakdown. That seems pretty intuitive, sure. One of the main muscle gurus that I have mentioned before is Dr. Bill Campbell from University of South Florida, and he shared a study where researchers reported that 3 hours after a lower body workout, exercise like squats, leg press, leg extension, leg curls, 3 hours post-leg workout, muscle breakdown increased by about 50% as compared to before the workout. What about muscle protein synthesis, however? Did anything happen to that? Muscle protein synthesis increased about 100%. So the overall effect of the resistance training exercise bout was that it actually increased muscle protein synthesis more than it decreased the breakdown. So this was kind of like a trick question, really hard to get. Yes, muscle protein breakdown did increase, but muscle protein creation actually increased more. So said a little bit differently, while we work out, we are creating muscular damage, little micro traumas, which yes, does actually break down muscle, but the overall net effect is anabolic, meaning to build up, because the signal to build from protein synthesis was even larger than breakdown. When it comes to muscle protein breakdown, should we be trying to prevent it as much as possible throughout the day and after your training? What do you think? Should we try not to have our muscle break down? Well, our first instinct is to do everything that we can to stop breakdown. But breakdown should not be looked at as a horrible process. Rather, breakdown should be looked at as an integral part to proper maintenance of healthy muscle fiber function. And it does this via its roles in degrading old and damaged proteins. I like to think of it like our skin cells. We are constantly losing old and dying and dry skin cells to make new and more resilient, stretchy, vibrant cells. If you didn't do this to your muscle, you would end up having damaged muscular proteins. This process is a way of clearing out all the old cells so that new ones can come in and have a chance to do their thing. Interesting research reported that in mice were genetically engineered so that they couldn't break down muscle protein properly. These mice were actually weaker and smaller than normal mice. That's crazy, right? This seems to reinforce the idea that some amount of muscle protein breakdown is necessary to optimally adapt to training and maximize your hypertrophy, which is your muscle growth. Hypertrophy just means muscle growth. In fact, some of the amino acids that get degraded during muscle protein breakdown, those are actually recycled back into the muscle fiber and used to build up new muscle as part of the muscle protein synthesis pathway. So think of it as like this building that you're building. You're taking down the old stuff and you're using some of that material to make this building better. The way that Dr. Campbell views muscle protein breakdown is that he wants some of this process to occur naturally, but you don't want to do this excessively. as can happen when you're in a calorie deficit, and especially if you're overtraining for a prolonged period of time. But for all the bros out there, like me, who want to keep as much muscle tissue as possible, you can do things to lower the extent of muscle breakdown after a workout. Like you could ingest foods that increase your insulin, such as carbohydrates and whey protein. Think like rice, great rice, vegetables, stuff like that. I myself do try to get food in as soon as I can after my workouts, but I really don't stress about it. If it works out, it works out. But if it doesn't, it's not that big of a deal to me. Everyone is different here. And unless you're doing a physique or strength competition or some sort of competition where you're trying to be one of the top people in your category to do it, it probably doesn't matter much to most of us. Awesome. Question number 3. True or false? Being older makes you gain weight. You will naturally want to hold on to more weight because you're getting older. True or false? Being older makes you gain weight. You're going to naturally want to hold on to more weight just because you're getting older. And the correct answer is false. Now hear me out. There's no question that total fat mass does increase on average as we age. But is it our age that we should be blaming? I believe, and the data seems to support this, that the answer is not really. Our total daily energy expenditure seems to be pretty stable between the ages of 20 and 60 years old. Your total daily energy expenditure seems to be pretty stable between 20 and 60. AKA getting older isn't slowing down, quote unquote, slowing down your metabolism. A much more plausible explanation for weight gain is an increase in your calorie intake and a decrease in your physical activity as you age. What if as we age, we are typically better off financially and we can afford a nice meal more often? What if as we age, we enjoy a fancy wine or cocktail throughout the week and we enjoy a more comfortable lifestyle, and over time, we have less time periods of when we're actually in a calorie deficit? This also means that we're moving less as we are able to take advantages of all the things that make our lives easier that maybe we couldn't do when we were poor students, or the time period when we didn't have the one-touch button to do everything, when we actually had to roll our car windows down with our arm strength, when we actually had to walk down the street to go get our mail, when we actually had to go to the store to get our groceries. All of this stuff is definitely reducing our physical activity when we don't do that nowadays. None of them are necessarily bad or evil, and they're not things that we should avoid, but they do result in a positive energy balance. And if you let them, that means the energy needs to be stored, and our bodies do a really, really good job of that. It's also way too easy nowadays to overeat 1,000 calories at a nice restaurant in just one meal. Also, one thing that happens as we age is we lose muscle mass. This is why I think it's crucial that we continue to lift weights as we age. And now is the best time to start. Because the more muscle that you have, the more energy your body expends. Muscle is a calorie-burning tissue that allows us to be strong enough to do whatever we want, whenever we want. And as we age, we stop doing movements, we stop lifting heavy, so our body says that we don't need to do that anymore. It slowly sees that, well, this muscle isn't really needed, so why do we need to keep it around? If you don't use it, you lose it. Now you're burning less calories, less energy at rest. Your body is moving less in so many ways, not just in total steps, but even in your ranges of motion. Your knees never have to bend past 90 degrees. Think about in life, when have you ever had to sit with your hip crease lower than your knee crease? Not on the toilet, not on the couch, not on the chair at your desk. You don't have to unless you actively try to do it. Maybe you have a kid that you play with, and instead of bending over at the hips, you get into a deep squat. What about arms stop going above your head? You really don't have to lift much above your head nowadays. That's why when I train 80 and 90-year-olds, the number one thing that we work on is just being able to lift their arms above shoulder height. It's insane. What about your ankles? Your ankles stop dorsiflexing all the way, meaning like a ballerina going up on the tippy toes. We do this so gradually that as we age, eventually become this 80-year-old person who shuffles and needs a walker to get anywhere. They can't lift their knee up in hip flexion to step over things, and they become fragile because their muscle mass decreases. They need a walker everywhere they go, and they don't even think about getting their arms over their head. You can barely get them above their shoulder height at that stage. It's a scary decline that I don't want to be a part of myself. I'm training right now to be the most badass 100-year-old out there. Could I get hit by a bus tomorrow? Sure. But if I do make it to 100 years old, I'm definitely going to be able to raise my hands over my head, get off the floor without using my hands, be able to dead hang for 30 seconds. I do these things today strictly to have that goal in the future. When you get off your ground without using your hands, you give yourself the strength and you give yourself the confidence that if you ever do fall, that you can help yourself up. I sit in a deep squat as a resting position because I want to be able to get down there if I ever have grandchildren or nephews and nieces that I want to play with. I hang from a bar every single day. I do pull-ups now, but I just want to be able to hang from a bar. My goal is 2 minutes in total. These things are not sexy. These aren't things that are going to get me ripped abs or huge biceps, but they are crucial for strong, independent life. I've seen jacked old people that have the bodies of 30 and 40-year-olds, maybe with some hormonal assistance, of course, but at least we know that it's possible. And if it's possible, that's one goal that I'm going to strive for. What do you think? Did you answer true? Let me know your argument as to why being older makes you gain weight. I choose to believe it's my choice, and I hold myself accountable to be a badass 100-year-old. All right, next up, quiz question number 4. What type of cardio is best for fat loss? What type of cardio is best for fat loss? Is it high intensity interval training? Is it moderate intensity steady state cardio? Or is it low intensity steady state cardio? High intensity interval training, moderate intensity steady state cardio, low intensity steady state cardio, or is it all three have their pros and cons? It depends. And the correct answer is, of course, all three have their pros and cons. It depends. Let's talk about what's the difference between the three of these. And also, let's touch on some pros and cons of each style. We'll start it off with high intensity interval training. High intensity interval training, or HIIT, is a form of exercise in which short periods of extremely demanding physical activity are alternated with less intense recovery periods. HIIT experts tout that this style of training maximizes your calorie burning potential by incorporating it into your cardio routine. Some pros of HIIT training are, it's very high calorie burn per minute when you do it. You can work out for less time, saving you more time for other things in your day, and you burn a similar amount of calories compared to moderate intensity or low intensity. You also receive a small boost of metabolism spike for a short period of time after HIIT training. It's called EPOC, excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. Now, how I think of this is that you created a little deficit of oxygen in your body, and now the whole system that is your body, your organs, your brain, your muscles, everything, your body now has to work harder. Your lungs use more energy getting oxygen. Your body uses more energy to cool you down. It's trying to get you back to homeostasis. So you're actually reaping the benefit of excess post-exercise calorie burn. However, there are some people out there, I've worked for a company that really put EPOC as the backbone of why it helps their members lose weight. When in fact, EPOC is just one small reason why HIIT training is beneficial. True HIIT training aficionados would not call most of the stuff that us group fitness people do as HIIT training. True HIIT training is actually really, really hard. You push yourself to some super high limits for a very short period of time, and you actually get lots of recovery compared to your work periods. But that's really just splitting hairs here. And I found that splitting hairs doesn't really do much for helping the majority of people who would be listening to this right now. Let's go for cons. Cons of HIIT training are that it adds a lot of training fatigue, which goes hand in hand and means that you should require a lot more recovery. Also, the higher the intensity, by definition, the more a person is at risk for injury. And this is obviously on a scale. The more fit and trained you are, the less risk you're going to experience, unless your intensity goes to a level where you're not there yet. But someone coming straight off the couch, right into a HIIT workout, will have a higher risk for something to go wrong due to their lack of fitness, their body awareness and training. And this is compared to moderate intensity or low intensity steady state cardio. HIIT training is a fantastic way to challenge the body's systems in a very short period of time. And I recommend that if your goals are fat loss or cardiovascular endurance, that yes, you want to start slow, but definitely work your way up to maybe 2 to 4 sessions of HIIT training a week. 2 is a great number of sessions, while 4 would be on the higher side, in my opinion. Definitely takes a little bit of time to recover from it. You got to work your way up to that, and you have to bring an intensity that matches where you're currently at. I personally, myself, I shoot for 2 to 3 days of HIIT training, and I do this along with my slow, meditative hypertrophy resistance training sessions. So when I lift, that's more of my me time, my time to kind of go inward. I do it slow. I barely get a sweat sometimes. I don't move very fast. I take lots of rests. I do that type of lifting about 6 times a week. So yes, this is on the very high side for training, and I'm probably flirting with overtraining most of the time. But what I'm trying to say here is that I think HIIT training is a great thing to incorporate into your routine. Try to get it in there, especially if your goals are fat loss or if your goals are cardiovascular endurance. Moving on, next is moderate intensity steady state cardio, or MISS, M-I-S-S. This is also called sometimes zone 2 cardio. When you're in zone 2 cardio, you could have a conversation with someone, but you really would rather not. Whereas when you do HIIT, you're maxed out, you're gassed. After a high intensity interval effort, you're desperately trying to collect yourself. Zone 2 is more, you're challenged, but it's totally doable for a long period of time. 15 to 60 minutes, steady, no super huge changes up and down in intensity. Moderate intensity steady state includes any physical activity that produces a heart rate ranging from about 140 beats per minute to 160 beats per minute if you're wearing a heart rate monitor. Examples of moderate intensity steady state cardio include jogging, elliptical, Stairmaster. There's just an endless amount of things that you could do for your steady state moderate intensity cardio. Pros of moderate intensity cardio are that it's fantastic for cardiovascular endurance. Do you want better heart health? Do you want better vascular health? Are you training for a race like a 5K or a half marathon or a triathlon sprint? Well, moderate intensity steady state is a fantastic way to build up aerobic capacity. Doing moderate intensity steady state also has a moderate caloric burn per minute. It's pretty good. However, even though it looks great on paper, how many calories you're burning running or riding a bike or whatever you decide to do, I personally do my moderate intensity steady state cardio by doing a programmed shooting drill on the basketball court. And I do this just to work on my hand-eye skills. I do this because I love basketball. I do it when I'm outside in the sunshine. I'm not really going hard as if I was playing a basketball game, but I'm definitely working harder and getting my heart rate up higher and getting some sweat going and some heat created more than if I was, let's say, playing a game of pig and just shooting around with a friend. So you can get really creative here. It doesn't have to be boring. In fact, it should not be boring. Do something that you enjoy. Life is short. Cons of moderate intensity steady state cardio is that it does have some interference with your hypertrophy pathways, meaning that if your goal is straight up muscle gain, if you want to gain muscle mass, if you're looking to keep your muscle mass or build or tone your muscles as much as possible, well then moderate intensity steady state, it actually sends the opposite signal to the body. In layman's terms, you're trying to pat your head and rub your tummy at the same time. We've talked about how running and or biking, for example, over long periods, without much stress to the body's muscular system, it tells the body that we don't really need all of this expensive, heavy, metabolic, active muscle tissue because it's making it harder for us to do this activity for long periods of time. Efficiency. We want to be efficient, right? So let's just break down some of this muscle and become more efficient at running and or biking. And now, if you're running uphill with a weight vest on, or you're biking at a high resistance or a high wattage, actually getting some real good resistance on the legs, some of that breakdown can be mitigated because you're asking your body to use muscle along with your moderate intensity steady state cardio. Along with your diet, if you have a high protein diet, that's giving you the building blocks that you need to be able to keep that muscle mass. However, this will probably have detrimental effects on how long you can do your cardio if you have a weight vest on or if you have high watts. It may even take you out of moderate intensity and up into high intensity. So it's kind of like a sliding scale here. I hope I explained that clearly. And lastly is low intensity steady state cardio, or just steady state cardio as we've called it on the podcast. Low intensity steady state, or LISS, L-I-S-S, is a method of cardiovascular exercise in which you do aerobic activity at a very low intensity. And you do this for a continuous and often extended period of time. LISS is a new term used to describe a low-intensity style of training. However, this form of exercise has been around for decades. In fact, it's been around for as long as we've been humans because walking is pretty much low-intensity steady state. This typically calls for about 30 to 60 minutes spent at the fat-burning sweet spot, quote-unquote the fat-burning sweet spot, roughly about 60% of your maximal heart rate effort. If you don't know your max heart rate, take 220 minus your age. You can get a general idea of what your max heart rate might be. 60% of that is what they say is the fat burning sweet spot. They call this the fat burning sweet spot because in this zone, you are burning a higher percentage of fats to carbs. But we've talked about this already, and the name is super misleading, and a lot of the fitness equipment industry got a hold of this thing and really blew it out of proportion because your overall calories are way lower. Sure, if I burn 60% of fat of 100 calories, that's 60 calories of fat. But if I'm doing HIIT training, I'm getting 800, 900 calories depending on how long I do it. Maybe I'm only getting 30% of that, but that's way more than at this lower intensity. So the overall calories are lower, but you're going to have a higher percentage shifted towards burning fat in this 60% of your max heart rate zone. Low intensity steady state, like other forms of low to moderate intensity exercise, they have many health benefits. It can help lower your risk of high blood pressure, your risk of stroke, obesity, diabetes, and several types of cancer. It can also improve your muscle strength, your aerobic fitness, your mental health for sure, your cognitive brain function, and another important one, your sleep. It's really important. Anything that you could do at a moderate intensity steady state can be done at a lower intensity steady state. Walking, hiking, super light jogging or biking, even casual swimming, literally any activity that you enjoy that is above your resting heart rate, but below your moderate intensity zone 2 training that we just talked about can be included in this LISS type activity. My favorite form of low intensity steady state is walking the beach at Torrey Pines. It's my most favorite restorative time, my reflective time. It adds thousands of steps to my daily total, and it's something that I thoroughly look forward to. I specifically plan it into my week, and it has both a physical and a mental benefit for me. So if you're sedentary, if you have a desk job where you sit a lot or you don't move for hours, if your goal is fat loss and overall health, in my opinion, low intensity steady state should be one of the first levers that you pull to get you started with your goals. It's where I almost always start my first time clients off at. I pick something that they look forward to, make it social with friends and family or pets. I stack it with something that they already do, like making phone calls or walking after meals. Just because it has the lowest calories per minute out of all three of these training styles absolutely does not mean that is the least important factor. By now, we should know that calories are just one little thing towards our fitness goals. Yes, if you're eating more than you're expending, you're going to gain weight, but there are so many behavior changes that can affect this without you having to focus on the number of calories. In fact, I would probably say that low intensity steady state is most important for the majority of us living here in today's sedentary world. That's the one that you guys should be picking first. So walking, hiking, getting outside in nature and getting your body moving, reducing the amount of sedentary time that you have during the day. So again, depending on what you're looking for, all three of these have fantastic pros and they all have their downsides. It's all about finding what you can do consistently that matches your health, fitness, and wellness goals. All right, let's do one more right here. The last question for this quiz is quiz question number 5. True or false? You have over 100,000 calories of energy stored as carbohydrates in your body, and only 2,000 calories of energy stored as fat. True or false? You have over 100,000 calories of energy stored as carbohydrates, and only 2,000 calories of energy stored as fat in your body. And the answer is false. So again, according to Dr. Bill Campbell, who is one of the world's leading experts on this topic, it's actually the opposite. Your body stores a tremendous amount of energy or calories in the form of adipose or fat tissue, totaling over 100,000 calories for the typical adult. This number is climbing as our people are becoming a higher percentage of overweight and obese. We're almost up to 3 out of every 4 people being in the overweight or obese category in the United States. 3 out of 4. In contrast, a typical adult only stores about 2,000 calories of energy in the form of carbohydrates. Most people think of calories as only being in foods, but calories are essentially energy. Food has energy and our body has energy as well. Our bodies store nearly all of this fat energy in our adipose tissue. This is the fat that's underneath your skin, and it's what you see when you're referring to as you want to lose fat. If you can jiggle it, then it's most likely adipose tissue, or also called subcutaneous fat. There are a few other places our bodies store fat as well, but these are trivial when compared to the adipose tissue under the skin. All combined, these other caloric fat stores hold less than 2.5% of your total energy stored as fat. Only 2.5%. The other fat stores include inside your muscle, inside your blood as triglycerides, and inside your blood as free fatty acids. Carbohydrates are mostly stored as glycogen in our muscles, with some additional storage in our liver, also called glycogen. There is also a trivial amount of blood glucose that can be used for energy in the bloodstream. It's a very small amount. Knowing we have all of this caloric energy stored in our bodies, you never have to worry about running out of energy. For most of us, it's virtually impossible. All right, in closing, I'd like to leave you with this quote. Quote, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Just because it's the average doesn't mean it's right. Just because it's the majority doesn't mean the minority is wrong. Be the weird and rare, health-focused person in your circle. You'll get made fun of. You'll get judged frequently. Many of your actions will be constantly questioned and argued. You'll be misunderstood very often. But in the end, you'll be looked up to and admired. And most importantly, someone out there is going to have their lives inspired and in turn changed for the better just because of you. And that's pretty special. I'm grateful for your time. It's the most finite resource in the universe. I'm grateful for you playing along with this health quiz and learning along with me. Be proud of yourself that you took this time for yourself to grow today. Keep it up. It's going to pay off. This I'm sure of. And that's it, my friends, for this week's health quiz. Share the knowledge that you gained with your friends and family and let us know how many questions did you get right. If you enjoyed this content, it helps a ton if you can post on your social media stories a screenshot of the episode with one takeaway or one thing that you learned, and make sure that you tag me and share your journey. Tag me at Livin the Dream _podcast or at Coach Damien _SD, and let us know how this episode benefited you. I would really appreciate it. I'll be right here with you, making us stronger, happier, and healthier humans. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.